Hello everybody, Ben Rogers here, the Raptors Digest, reacting to the Toronto Raptors 126-101 loss to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Ryker, the East still runs through Cleveland. Tristan Thompson was correct. Despite our record, despite Cleveland's 17-50 record, they still get the best of us.
Well, every time the Raptors catch a little footing, whether it's at the top of the league or catching up to the Milwaukee Bucks, because you've seen, those two top teams now have slipped a little bit in their past few contests against lower teams. The Raptors, characteristically need to stay on par with the rest of the top and let a couple of games slip against bad teams as well.
Yeah, well, you mentioned it, the Milwaukee Bucks, they lost to the Suns the other day. The Warriors lost to the Suns, and I guess it was our turn to lose to a very poor team. Before we get into it, do you have our first segment?
Yep, we are back hot and heavy with the comment of the day, and I had it pulled up, and it's just going to take a second for me to draw it, so here it is. It's basically, I'll throw it up on the board, but we're basically saying he's reminding everybody that all the comments when people were hating on, I had to blur out the profanity that was used, but all the comments at the beginning of the season, sometimes us included, not you so much, but me, hating on Lowry or being critical of Lowry and saying that we should trade away Lowry. He's turned his play around since All-Star break, and he's really been, this is in comment of the last game, he's really been sort of the catalyst of a lot of the winning and a lot of the what's good for the Toronto Raptors, because
he's
when
healthy.
Kawhi Leonard plays, he's consistent. And when Kyle Lowry, now it's good.
And Lowry's healthy. That's the thing about Kyle Lowry right now. He was completely injured. He had those injections in his back. My only worry with Kyle Lowry was, will he be healthy going forward in the season? Now, that's something we have to talk about within this pod, because obviously he went down with an ankle injury. But a healthy Kyle Lowry is a top-tier point guard in this league. It's not necessarily going to be 20, 25 points per game necessarily, but he's certainly good for about 15 to the 20 range. But he'll facilitate for your team. He's leading the league in assists, or he's up there for the beginning of the season. He gets rebounds. He does all the little things on the court. Kyle Lowry is really the backbone of this roster. And even tonight where the Raptors struggled, for people that watch this game, it was absolutely horrible. It was not a good look for the Toronto Raptors, but Kyle Lowry had a decent night. Him and Kawhi played all right. Kyle had 14 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds, and Kawhi had 25 points and 9 rebounds, but a lot of that damage came in the first half, especially from Kawhi, and the Cavs just really got the best of the Toronto Raptors tonight.
Absolutely, and it's not very characteristic, though, for the Toronto Raptors to get blown out in games.
Yeah.
We've seen them lose a couple of games, the Orlando Magic, for example, or other teams that are close calls that you would have hoped that they could handle more easily. But it's very rare that the Raptors are going to get absolutely blown out of the water. And now to put on top, all credit due to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Almost all their starting lineup, actually all their starting lineup scored in double digits. But this really shouldn't happen at the end of the day.
Certainly, we're coming down to the late stretch of the season. Kawhi Leonard and the Raptors have been open about how they're only looking forward to the playoffs. Kawhi had that quote about every other game is just practice, and when you play a team that's 17-50, you probably take it a bit more lightly than you should have. And the Cleveland Cavaliers, Colin Sexton balled out of his mind tonight with 28 points, so he came in motivated. Kevin Love is always pretty solid, but tonight he really had a monstrous performance. Only 16 points, but 18 rebounds for Kevin. Osman was good. Their whole roster, everyone came out motivated and hitting shots, and the Toronto Raptors tied a franchise record for 3-point shots in the previous game, and tonight the threes were not going down. There's a lot of issues with the Toronto Raptors on the court. It seemed like their offense just really couldn't get going.
Absolutely, but you know what? If you've stuck with us this far, good on you. We normally, our views are not up on losses, so let's try as much as we can to keep everybody's attention with the most relevant and exciting facts. And we got two big things that happened this game. One is, as you mentioned, Kyle Lowry went down with an injury, which is the worst thing that can happen for this poor man, because that's when we always see his game recede, because he takes incredibly long to come back to form and play well. And then the second thing is we have the fight of the century, or perhaps just the fight of this season, with Serge Ibaka. Let's talk about Lowry first, though.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Kyle Lowry, the Serge Ibaka is going to get suspended for a couple games. We'll go ahead and get into that after. But Kyle Lowry is the very worrisome thing that's coming out of this game. There's a few things to worry about people's play styles, but this is certainly the most shook I am as a Raptors fan coming out of this one. Kyle Lowry, he went down with an ankle injury in the fourth quarter, and for some reason, because the Raptors were down pretty big, and he went down, and as a Raptor fan, you just want him to get taken out of the game, regardless if it's something serious or not. But they made him play, or Kyle, I guess, demanded to play on it for like 4 or 5 more minutes. Then he eventually gets taken out of the roster. I guess it's good that he was capable of playing on it, but we've seen Kyle Lowry do this in the past and then have a more serious injury. It's being diagnosed as an ankle twist right now, so you don't really know what that means. If it's a torn ligament, that's probably on the harsher end, or if it's just something that's going to be day to day. But with the Toronto Raptors, we raved about Lowry at the beginning of this podcast. We really can't have him going out right now, especially before the playoffs, because when Kyle Lowry's healthy, even in the playoffs, right, he's always plays well. The only issues that he's really had in the playoffs is he's had just these really unfortunate injuries, whether it's a giant cyst on his elbow, whether it's back spasms, whether it's whatever. And, that's where his playoff struggles have really stemmed from. So I was really hoping to see a healthy Kyle Lowry going into this playoffs. And, it'd be really unfortunate if this is something that sidelines him going through probably the biggest stretch of games in his career now that he has a true superstar alongside him.
Yeah, well, it is a big misconception that Kyle Lowry chokes. He gets sort of bundled into the Raptors' overall playoff performance. But if you really go back and look at the numbers and sort of look at what he's been able to do individually, he has stepped up usually come playoff time. Last season especially, he played all right. And it was just, of course, overshadowed by the looming dark cloud that was the failure to achieve sort of what they had planned for the Toronto Raptors last season. But he himself, he plays pretty well, so we hope that he can get back as soon as possible. But I'll tell you, even a minor injury can be something that holds a player out for a little while. I don't think that it's the worst thing if he sits. It'll probably hurt the regular season record a little bit, although we've had guys like McCaw and different role players step up and give production and win, be critical in games that they've won. So it's, It's good to have him. It's good to have him in the regular season. It doesn't really matter. What matters the most is if he does stay out with an injury, how quickly can he recover from it? Can he bounce back to proper form that he's been playing since post All-Star? Because it's been the Kyle Lowry of that we want. The Kyle Lowry deserving of $30 million kind of thing, and so. We'll see where that goes, and we'll obviously have more reports and updates on what the injury is. But let's talk about Serge Ibaka. We got 2 comment of the days, man. You give me a second here, all right? Okay, 2 comment of the days. Second comment of the day. This is a fun one. It was worth. I had to watch the highlights on Bleacher Report, I guess. Hopefully we can get the clips up for you guys, but copyright and all that. But this one. He says, Marquise Chris, that's obviously who Serge Ibaka was in the altercation with. This commenter says, Marquise Chris said his cooking show, referring to Serge Ibaka, said his cooking show on YouTube was no good. And then that's when Ibaka flipped out. Maybe so. What do you think?
No, that's something that could have been said. Serge Ibaka, he had his annual, fight for the Toronto Raptors, and usually it ends up in the Raptors sparking for a comeback win. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case tonight, but as fun as it is to see Serge Ibaka really go at someone, and Marquise Chris, you could tell he regretted saying whatever he said to Serge Ibaka on the ground as soon as Serge got up and started swinging. Serge does not take any garbage in there, as Jack Armstrong would say, from anybody, and he went straight at him. As fun as it is, this could be pretty unfortunate for the Toronto Raptors, because we're pretty thin up front. We just let go of Greg Monroe. We don't really have a proper backup power forward. Obviously, Marc Gasol can start at center. He started tonight, but Serge Ibaka is usually the de facto center. But we saw Chris Boucher get some run at the backup center position. We saw him get bullied by the likes of Kevin Love tonight in the 4 minutes that he's played. But we're pretty thin in the front court. So the next few games, we're playing some pretty big teams. We got Detroit again, who have Blake and Andre Drummond in the front court. There's a few teams that could really bully the Toronto Raptors the next few games as Serge Ibaka gets a substantial suspension.
Absolutely. And for, if we want to keep on the comical side for a second, for really, if you're gonna take a couple of games, if you're gonna try to rally the troops, at least get a few licks in. He failed chokehold attempt, failed punch. If you watch the highlights, he really was not successful for anything except pushing Marquise Chris very violently backwards and into the and into the camera reporters. But I definitely agree. You know, as a professional, it's not necessary. It's not necessary at all. It's not necessary to take the suspension, and I 100% agree with what you're saying, especially in a Detroit Pistons matchup where they barely got away in either game. You know, it's been close, tough fought, and it's been the two bigs for the Pistons that have done a wonderful job in taking advantage down low. So I do think that the Raptors are going to suffer a little bit, of course, you know, with the absence of Ibaka. And this is why some people have been calling for maybe picking up another player, given we didn't re-sign Jody Meeks. But I don't know if any of that is going to happen or if that's possible. But I definitely think it'll be interesting to see what Gasol's role is going to be now moving forward for the next few games.
Well, certainly. We have 2 open roster spots, and you mentioned it. We're looking for big men, before all these injuries happen, but obviously Fred VanVleet and possibly Kyle Lowry could be out for a stretch of games now. So we currently only have Jeremy Lin, who isn't a true point guard. You know, he's openly said how he usually plays off the ball. So, there's a lot of positions that could be filled for, this end stretch of season
Ben,
depth.
Really quick, is this not the exact same situation that sparked Lin's sanity back in, right, when Jeremy Lin was on the New York Knicks? We had a very depleted roster, and next man up.
Yeah. No, well, Jeremy Lin, hopefully we're praying that Kyle Lowry's not injured at all. We're hoping Lin's sanity happens regardless. But if Lowry does take a few games, and honestly, I think he should, regardless if Fred VanVleet is back or not, just going into the season, Kawhi has had his load managed pretty solidly this season. I think Kyle Lowry should as well. And if Jeremy Lin gets an opportunity to get some run, because he's very much struggled. He's been very underwhelming as a Toronto Raptors fan, seeing him come in and seeing what he's been able to do previously with other teams, and maybe just getting him to start. He struggled in that past game where he got the start at the 2 guard for the Toronto Raptors, but even tonight, he really struggled on the floor. He went 1 for 5 from the 3-point line, 8 points, 2 assists. Maybe Jeremy Lin needs something to spark him.
Absolutely. We're running a bit long. We can maybe continue the conversation after, but before too late, let's swing it into the segments. There might not be a lot to talk about, as much of a disaster as this game has been, but if you can think of anything, bring us through. If not, maybe we'll take passes for the first time ever.
Well, the Kawhi you do him like that. We said it earlier. We said the Kawhi you do him like that play earlier. It was the Serge Ibaka fight. I think we both are in agreement on that. Kawhi, you got to do Marquise Chris like that, Serge. You see the face on Marquise Chris when that fight broke out. That's the game where we lose by 25 points to one of the worst teams in the NBA. A good old fight is going to be the Kawhi do him like that play of the day.
Fair enough.
And not all plays can be the Kawhi do him like that play of the day, and some just make you say, "Oh, geez." And tonight, just the whole game was an "oh, geez" in my opinion.
The whole game was an "oh, geez," and as I might be able to suspect. The whole team deserves the DeMarre Carroll Gold Star Award for
that's the one
worst
I wanted
performance.
Yeah,
you can continue on with it.
That's the one we can really, really dive into because no one played well. Kyle Lowry, Kawhi Leonard were okay. Pascal Siakam wasn't bad, but relative to his usual standards was pretty bad. Everyone was in foul trouble. The refs were also some people that could be getting the DeMarre Carroll Gold Star Award. They were absolutely horrid tonight. Got everyone in foul trouble. There's weird calls. People that listen to the pod know I hate blaming games, and obviously the Raptors lost this one on their own, but no one could get in a groove because every time they touch someone, there'd be touchy fouls called on that. But the whole roster. Who is your most underwhelming performer tonight, in your opinion, Ryker?
Oh, I don't know. I expect more from Marc Gasol. That's a big one, right? That should go without saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was absolutely horrendous tonight. There's no other way of putting it. 2 points, 4 assists. He still does a decent job at facilitating 7 rebounds, but he's a guy that we were talking about how he could possibly take that, second or third position in the offense for the Toronto Raptors, obviously being a 3-time All-Star, having a very solid season prior to coming to the Toronto Raptors, and he's done it in the playmaking and defensive side, but he just can't score the ball. He's 0 for 2 from 3 tonight. His jumper just kind of looks broken. You remember the games of Marc Gasol playing where it was automatic from that mid-range, automatic from that open 3. What's it going to take for Marc Gasol? Obviously, Serge Ibaka is definitely going to be out for at least a couple more games. We really need Marc Gasol to turn it around these next few ones before the playoffs.
Absolutely. It's going to take for us, because obviously players hear this podcast, right? So we need to give them guidance. It's going to take us. We got to delve into vintage Memphis tapes, figure out what Marc Gasol's bread and butter, look at his best performances. We'll come back on the podcast. We'll say this is what he needs to start doing on the Raptors. in all seriousness, I don't know. I think, he's definitely a guy that, there's a lot of upside to him, right? But then equally as much, we can pick out different parts of his game that still, they need improving in this certain Raptors system. So we'll just see as the game goes on. I have faith in Nick Nurse and being able to put together a lineup that works best for him. It comes to lineups as well. Is it best to have him in the starting lineup? He's going to have to now, or play him off the bench behind Serge Ibaka. We'll see. Yeah. We'll see what happens.
Well, you kind of brought up what Memphis used to do with him. One of the most successful plays that Memphis used to run, especially the past 2 seasons when Marc Gasol really stretches range, is the pick and pop. Him and Mike Conley running those pick and pop threes, and then, they'd fake the pop, he'd do a nice roll and all those sorts of stuff. But, the Raptors haven't really ran too many of those pick and pop scenarios for Marc Gasol, but his jumper has just been so, underwhelming watching him play. So maybe it's not the move. It's going to be really interesting to see how he comes now that there isn't a backup center, proper one. Chris Boucher is not a center in this NBA. I know small ball and all that's a thing, but Chris Boucher is too thin, so he's definitely going to get some run. He needs to step up. The bench was also pretty bad tonight as well. OG Anunoby, he had a solid game last game. I think he was probably one of the better players off the bench for the lackluster performance they provided. He had 8 points. Norman Powell, he had 9 points. He had some nice drives, but 0 for 3 from the three-point line. Jeremy Lin, we already talked about him. He's been struggling. Patrick McCaw plays solid defense, but the whole roster just didn't have it going tonight.
Yeah, they were all in the minus. Nobody was positives in the plus minus. Everybody had 2 or 3. So, I don't know. Somebody had 5 turnovers. Poor performance. We're doing a lot of bashing here. It doesn't matter. People aren't interested in listening to that. So we can conclude here, basically say they need to improve, whatever. And there's a lot of question marks now moving forward with some injuries and some suspensions. But it's a regular season game. Who cares?
Certainly. We're not worried about this loss in particular. The Toronto Raptors have been so great this season. Obviously, a one loss to the Cleveland Cavaliers isn't very representative of the whole body of work, but there's certainly little things that need to be tweaked going to the playoffs, and let us know what you guys think they are. Comment section below. You're the best for making it this far. Check out the Twitter, the Instagram, all that cool stuff. We love hearing from you guys on all those platforms. We got those cool animations at the end of the video, Riker. Shouting out our own Instagrams.
Exactly. Yeah, give us a follow.
Yeah, we appreciate that stuff as well. Anyways, any last words, Riker?
No, that's it. Cheers.